Right, let me go down to where we need to be. Um, and right, I suppose first things first. Okay, some people are asking about the value proposition. Um, so here's the plan. You're diligently working away on your teams right now and looking at possible ideas. So this day next week, being on a Tuesday, each team, so one person, so you nominate a person from your team, okay, to present the idea. Obviously, because we're doing this on Zoom, not everyone can be jumping in and out. It causes havoc. So select one person just to make a quick presentation. Here are the two ideas. Now, some people have been asking me about documents and so on and so forth. No, keep this simple. Take the KISS approach. Keep it simple, stupid, as they say. So really, what keep this simple. All you need is ye have to have thought it out, and then just literally, could be on a card, could be on a piece of paper, whatever, what the two ideas are, and pitch them. Literally pitch them, like the Dragon's Den, if you've ever watched that stuff. But literally say, this is idea number one. It's a service, it's a product. We see that there's a market here for it, and possibly the size of the market, how many people, that kind of thing, approximations like that, or who you're aiming your product at. And we'll cover some of these today as well. and that's it. And once you've made your presentation, then I'll ask for a vote. Option one or option two. I'll synopsize what your idea is. So a few sentences, essentially, on each. What the product is, why do you think it has value, what's the benefit to a customer, and who are your customers, and how big is the market. So what's your product or service? What is the who are the intended customers? What benefits you're going to bring, the USP, the value proposition, and how many customers do you think are out there on the particular segment? So that's all, those kind of four-ish key areas to try and cover, whether it's as a product or a service. Also, as I said, some people ask if they already exist. Not a problem. I mean, that is life. You might find a different way of doing it. It's and I've said this so many times that it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel for all intents and purposes. You might just have a newer, better, more efficient, more cost-effective, more, I don't know, technological solution than somebody else. The for example, 2 years ago, one bike company introduced 12 gears on the cassettes. Normally it was 10, it was 9, then became 10, then 11 became the industry standard for a long time. Then one company said, maybe we can drop it down to 12 cogs on or 12 rings on the cassette. And now the others are in catch up, and they're all trying to do it. Is there a need for it? In actual fact, probably not. But marketing, this is the power of marketing. They've created this whole thing. Oh, 12 ring cassette, best thing ever. Wi-Fi setup, remote control on these things, better gearing ratios, easier to change between gears. You as a rider won't notice it. Wow, you're going to be great. Seriously, that's all they did. So the other big manufacturers are in catch up, and they're trying to do that now. I think there's another manufacturer coming out maybe 3 to 6 months. Why? Because people are looking at their patents. What are they doing? Are they coming out and so on? So it's been all marketing hype. Why do I say that? It's as simply as whether you have 9 gears or 12 gears on the back of your bike, and then multiplying by the rings you have in the front, and you can have 22 or 36, whatever rings, and a range of these things. It's down to you as a bloody cyclist. You know, if what's the difference between Nike, Puma, and all these other runners? Probably not a lot, as long as you're able to run freaking fast, you know. But it's marketing have us convinced, and that's what I'm trying to get you to do. Look at things, you know, if necessary, existing products or services that you think you can improve and make differently, you know. Um, and that's all it is, you know. This is it's so it's, uh, at the end of the exercise next week, each team will say, well, that's the one we're going to work on now. That's now we're going to build this out. So whatever the idea is preferred by the class teams or the classes, the class your fellow students, that'll become your focal project. And you build that. So you start building up the marketing plan, and that's your subject. That's all it is. But the important thing about it all is that it's the process of how you go out. So quite simply, you guys hopefully, undoubtedly, will get jobs in various companies and practices and so on when you finish all of this. Sometime in your career, you will think, well, geez, maybe I'll do something on the side. You know, maybe a bit of, you know, after hours physio, or, you know, online nutrition, or whatever it is. And you might find it's you're doing it as a hobby. Eventually, that thing will start growing. You mark my words. You'll be getting the odd more and more clients and so on. Eventually, you'll come to the critical point where, do I stay in my current job because my current job, 9 to 5, whatever, is interfering with my hobby? And that's a to use Trump's language, it's a beautiful place to be. Jesus Christ, I don't believe I said that. But it's a great place to be, because it kills several birds with one stone, to use the expression. It means that you're doing something that you're passionate about, and all the rewards follow. You don't have to worry about mortgages, worry about holiday payments, payments on your car, paying your rent, and all this sort of stuff. All that crap happens automatically because you're enjoying it, and the more you enjoy it, the better you are at it. The better you are at it, the more customers and clients you attract, and so on and so forth. That's a given. That's just the way it is. And so you will. So that's why this stuff might become extremely beneficial to you sooner or later. In any case, you'll be working in some kind of commercial entity. You could be working in the public service. I don't know. Would I recommend it? I don't know. Depends. It depends. You know. It's in any case, you might find that the public service side of things, you know, working in hospitals and clinics and old folks' homes and all that sort of stuff as a physio or a nutritionist and so on, might be nice to get some experience and so on. But you get into a routine of stuff, and you don't have the freedom to want to develop exciting new stuff. You might get exposure to some technology, or if you're really fortunate, you might end up in one of these high-end private clinics, for example. You know, BlackRock or Hermitage or so on, Bone Secure, and these type of hospitals where they might have cutting edge technology in specific areas as a rehab specialist, or you might end up in sports rehab with one of the national agencies or national sports and so on. But not everyone will fit. Will there are only so many openings around the place, you know. But you know, as I said, I'm only guessing the type of roadmaps. But in any case, this is where you'll have this under your belt to give you some option that if in time I want to make a choice. And that's why getting the process, first you have to come up with the idea. That's what we've done through all this thing. And I've shown the tools, models, and so on and so forth up to now. And now your team will come up with a couple of ideas, and most likely it can happen down the road. You don't have to do these things solo. By that I mean that, you know, you're in a job and you might come up with an idea. You might bounce it off one of your classmates. Ring them up after 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Here, I have an idea. What do you think? Remember you mentioned this, or you were interested in that when we were back in college, or you might have been keeping in touch, whatever the case may be. And the bottom line is that you probably won't go it alone. You'll bring one or two friends with you, and that are in the same area maybe. Whatever the case may be, that's why we're getting you to work in these teams and get settled in and get the old creative juices flowing, so to speak. And ultimately, you'll end up with a possible product or service. And sometimes, what you might come in here now. One thing I would say is that if you come up with a really cracking idea, don't release it. It's only part of this exercise. If it's something that is really, I mean, genuinely viable, that you could actually launch in a month's time or 6 months' time, don't. And the reason for that is right now, the mechanisms are such that you as students, the college owns the IP. So if you have a brilliant idea and you want to launch a business, the college actually owns it. That's according to your student. And I had this when I had the Entrepreneurship Academy in the college. So we negotiated deals where the students own their own IP and all that sort of. That's a whole other area. But just in case, just to make you aware of the environments that you're operating in, and so on. So anyway, that's my kind of pep talk and guidance. Are you all happy about what has to be done then? Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up and getting nods and so on. I have a lot of pages of people here online, and if you, I know this can be a bit of a pain in the butt, but if you can, just give me a thumbs up on reactions. Yeah. So that's it. Just two ideas: a product or a service. I don't need any formal documentation. For heaven's sake, no. It's just put your heads together, jot something down on your own notes and so on, and then that comes up as that become your pitch next week. And again, we'll do it in this time slot, since we have the maximum 2 hours. It shouldn't take 2 hours. Quick in and out, quick decisions, and no hanging about, and that's it. Then that's what we'll take up next week. Now we need to make sure that everyone gets, or at least every team gets their 2 ideas presented and 1 chosen. That's the goal for next week, or for next Tuesday, and then we're up and running as such. Now, invariably I do get questions such as, can we change it afterwards? Of course, you can change it. Now, that doesn't mean that you say, okay, take the foot off the gas. We'll do any old crap for next Tuesday. We can change our minds afterwards. No. Doesn't work like that. Well, it doesn't for yourselves anyway, because it just means that you're going to double the workload for yourselves, and we don't want that. So, solid effort first time around. You might find, well, in actual fact, the chances are you wanting to change your mind anyway, it will be slim to none, because you're not doing a full business plan. If you were doing a full business plan, there is every propensity to have to change, or possibly change, because maybe you find that some materials or inputs or whatever required are more expensive, and therefore it's not going to become a viable proposition. Therefore you pivot, and you've been hearing those kind of words being used in the media every which way you turn. We pivoted on the supply chain, we pivoted on the, oh Jesus. Anyway, that's basically where it came from in business, to pivot the idea. Anyway, enough said on that. So I'm hoping now you're all clear and you're happy to fire ahead. Now, today, I'm just going to bring a little bit more into analyzing the market. Obviously, it feeds directly into what you're doing right now. So I'm trying to keep it in the process, as we say. So let me get me things out and all this sort of stuff, and get down out of the bottom here. Now, question for you. Can you see that visibly, legibly? Is that particularly the title in there, Analysing the Marketing Environment?
Yeah, it's all clear.
And no, I'm kind of using you as an experiment as well. Is it anyway blurred? No. Happy days, Matty Hayes. Is there anyone here from Tipperary, Waterford? South Tip or Waterford? No. I'm just looking back through this. No, doesn't seem to be. I'll be shot for saying this. I have this awful expression, happy days, Matty Hayes. Matty Hayes was a character in Clonmel, and he used to own a small shop, and quite a popular character. Shot for saying this. Beckett. And anyway, Matty Hayes used to be, hey, happy days, yo, happy days. But Matty had an Eastern European girl working in the shop for him, and he ended up having an affair with the girl, and the wife found out, and Matty's life fell apart. And on one particular Christmas Eve, apparently he committed suicide. I know it's sad, and he did, and that's how he's become immortal from Happy Days, Matty Hayes, because of the irony in the whole thing. Anyway, the pressure got too much for them. Anyway, so if you ever mention it, if you're down that neck of the wood, you'll people will recognize and you get a smile off their faces. Okay, I'll be shot for saying things like that. Right. Happy Days. Moving on. So what we're going to do is this. As I said, this is the stuff that's going to be kind of feeding directly into your space right now. Analyzing the market. Okay, better get on to the right channel thing, and here we are. So when I'm talking here now of the companies, I'm talking about G as your T. So all you could do is replace your companies with team. So we need to look at the environment that you're working in, what's happening within your own company, and then of course the macro environment, what's happening outside, what's going on around, and how we evaluate it. And there are basic tools for this, our processes and so on. And then responding to the marketing environment. Markets change, people change, different fads kick in. Different clothing fads, start to kick in. It's for example, right now, probably one of the big fads are your products eco-friendly and all this sort of stuff. So, is it a fad? Probably a little bit mean of me to say so, but let's be honest. It's the topic. The last few years will be for the next few years. Green energy being used, blah, blah, blah. So these are market environments and market forces, different competitions and so on. So we'll start looking down through here. That's the topic outline. So the marketing environment, all the actors or any of these forces outside marketing that affect marketing managers' ability to build and maintain successful relationships with customers. So that covers up absolutely everything. So you were I'll try and keep it localized. You have a nice little tidy nutrition stroke physio offering. You say, eat these foods, do these exercises, and you'll have a nice healthy body, and you'll be able to continue working more, do focus and study better, for example. But everything outside, others have been thinking. I said, well, if you change these, someone else might come up with this other concoction of a drink, and maybe say these are better exercise, and go swimming in the water, in the sea, and this, that, and the other. So these are all outside your little immediate environment. They all impact you. Other companies will say, that crap that Mark is selling and that combination of exercise, not worth a horse's ass. The stuff we're doing is far more superior and so on. So you have to try and convince your customers, no, don't mind them, stay with us. I mean, look at what we've done so far and so on. Because you've built a relationship, you're giving them the feedback, you're giving them data back on how they perform and so on and so on. So these are, you have all this pressure coming in, and you could end up with sleepless nights because there's another company after opening up, or another practice or service after opening up in the next town or village or city or whatever, and they're in your backyard, literally competing for the same customers. So you have to think, well, what am I going to do about this? Clearly, you'll have to do something. So also the factors that are close to the company that affect its ability to service customers, the customer's suppliers, the market intermediaries, the customer markets and competitors and so on. All of these, then the public themselves, all of these elements, every one of these things will interfere with what you're trying to do. And these are known as market forces. But they're very real and they exist. You have a group of clientele, you want to hold on to them. You've built this up over a number of years maybe. You want to hold on to them and you want to protect them because it's your livelihood. It's what you enjoy doing and you make money from it. You make a living from it as such. So this ability, so the companies and the suppliers, if for example you're providing particular combination of nutritions, let's say you had specific suppliers that you were buying, I don't know, vegetables from a particular part of the country because they're rich and they have more mineral content and so on. And let's just say that supplier decides, at the hell with this, I'm getting out of vegetable arable work, I'm getting more into dairy. So suddenly your one of your key ingredients or key source of ingredients, the supplier, is going out of business. Or maybe someone else has decided that I know where he's sourcing all his vegetables for these drinks that he's making. I'm going to go into the farmers and offer a higher price and sign a contract that they'll only supply to me. Business is brutal. And suddenly your farmer says, unless, Mark, you're going to double your price, I'm not going to deal with you. That's where supplier pressure can come in as well, or you cut off. So that might be a key element to your business. And suddenly, or over time, you're now threatened because of suppliers, for example, because they're putting pressure on you. Market intermediaries. Let's just say you have a small kitchen cottage industry that makes these drinks, protein drinks of a sort and so on, but you're selling them through marketing intermediaries such as other companies. Maybe you're selling them to SuperValu, Spar, Londis, Duns, or whatever, or you're selling them through chemists, for example. It could be a product just as easily as a nutritional drink. But let's just say these, and another competitor can come in, or they're not placing your product in a good place in the shop. It's down in the back shelf somewhere else, and so on, and it's not selling for you. These are all real things that can have a negative effect on your business. And then the customer markets themselves, who are you selling to? The right customers? Are you trying to sell high energy drinks to old folks' homes? Not that there's anything wrong with old folks' homes. I'm not too far off one, but technically, would I want to sell to old folks? Maybe the constituents are more suitable to a younger physiology. Someone under 30 years of age, or maybe under 40 years of age. Beyond that, they become a little bit more complex and the benefits aren't as good. So you've chosen the wrong market, essentially, in the first instance. So looking at being very aware, and the market shifts and what happens. Or maybe it might be a case of, see all these old fellas there in their 60s and 70s. Jesus, these guys are extremely fit. They would benefit from this drink. Let's switch from the old folks' home to these old guys. Why? Because they're all out shagging lycra men at the weekends, and they are relatively fit. So they might benefit from it. You might focus on it, or they might just try it and say, hang on a sec, this is really good for us actually, and that's a whole new market. So you've got to be watching the usage and so on. And of course the competitors goes without saying, and public kind of fits into the public. If let's just say if some of the old fellas got sick from using what you had provided, or they got a bad batch and so on and so forth, and none of them were your customers, or none of your customers, or let me rephrase that. Someone got sick. Maybe they didn't put it back in the fridge. They didn't cool it, or didn't boil it, or whatever. And they got sick. Word gets out. And what made you sick? Oh, Cashin's concoction. That shite that he told me would give me energy. Yeah, it gave me energy, all right. I can now do the 100 meters squid sprint. Jeez, I don't believe I said that. But in any case, I can get to the toilet faster than I would have done previously, because but by association, Cashin's concoction made me sick, and other people talk about it. So pressure can come on, and everyone, and then maybe, let's say worst case scenario, it goes out in the public airways. RT News has a 6 o'clock. Retailers have been asked to recall Cashin's concoction because it's there's found to be some potentially harmful ingredients in it and something like that, and that can be a public. So something like that, I mean, God knows you've heard all the stories, glass in baby's milk and stuff like that. I mean, that happened in China, as it happened, And it ended up the CEO or president of the company and one of the vice presidents both committed suicide as a consequence, because children in China are so highly regarded and valued and all this sort of stuff that anything could harm them is a problem. That's why Irish baby foods are so popular and much sought after in China, because of their high natural content and all that sort of stuff. It's a huge business for baby food manufacturers in Ireland, selling into China. It has a phenomenal reputation. Less synthetic food going into it. So anyway, these are the public kind of things that can happen. So this is just a barometer here, from the company itself. These are stuff or things that you can kind of do, and you have direct control. All the rest outside on this dashboard, you can influence to varying degrees. Okay, right through to the customers. Customers, you have probably more direct influence. The rest, you'd have varying degrees of influence. But if you look at the company itself, who's in there? You have these functional areas. You have obviously you have the management side. You have finance, the R&D department, operations and supply chain, purchasing. Also, you'll have accounting, you'll have IT. Now this is a bigger organization. Even if you're a small little entity, you still have these functions. You still have to have somebody to look after your accounts for you if you don't do it yourselves. Probably someone that can do a little bit of marketing for you if you don't want to be doing this stuff yourself. You want to concentrate on what you actually do and how you manage your business is really important. So you need to know the environment. You need to know something about business to be able to manage your business. Even though you might be the best in the world in terms of being a physio or being a nutritionist or being some sports scientist or specialist in any of these areas, you could be the best in the world in these. It's still a business. I was in with my ophthalmic surgeon yesterday, who jokingly we said he put the lens in back to front. Technically, it's almost like that. But anyway. I say he even told me, he said, I get young people, in their 30s and 40s coming in looking for perfect vision and all this sort of stuff. Don't want to wear glasses, this, that, and the other. And he said, I'll charge him €4,000 for doing something like that, So he knows his business. He knows how many people he needs to be putting through to pay for the rent of the practice, to pay for a secretarial staff and run his appointments and all that, and so on, to market his business or to market and get his name out there. And so even though they might not, don't think of these as big companies or multinationals and so on. So these are functions that have to be done. You might have to hire a secretary. You might have to hire an administrator. You might need to get somebody, HR consultancy, to help you find an assistant and so on and so forth, because you haven't got the time to be doing it yourself. So these are the functions. HR will be another function inside there. I mentioned IT. You might, if you have 2 or 3 people working for you, for example, you might actually have to run a payroll system. You don't just go here, here's the money. You'll definitely outsource your accounting and finance to a part-time accountant. Why would you do it yourself? You just give it all the information, keep copious notes and track of everything that comes in, everything goes out. Let them sort out and do the accounts and minimize the government's tax take as such. And so on. So this is why, having, the microenvironment, understanding how all of these elements work together. And marketing is one of the, who's going to do the marketing? You might outsource it to a company. A friend of my wife's just opened up a company there in January, which does logos and designs and websites for companies, just as a service. And that means everything, to be able to do something like that. So you don't have to go out and wreck your head and learn about WordPress or web design and all this sort of crap. Pay a small fee, get someone else to do it on happy days. Of course, the suppliers, they provide the resources to produce the goods and services and treat it as partners to provide customer value. So again, equally as much, and oftentimes companies overlook this, sometimes they get it wrong. They look at their suppliers and say they're most important to us, and guarantee the supply of the right materials, components, whatever coming into us. Or if it's a service they're providing to, make sure, and ignoring the customer side of it, or not treating it equally. Big mistake. The customers are your gods. You look after them. You do whatever you have to do for your customers. But you also need to look after your suppliers, and you might be able to inform your suppliers now, look, I'm going to expand, I'm going to have more and more customers, therefore I might need more supplies for you. Can you ramp up and provide these additional resources to me, or components, ingredients, whatever it is? So you're working on a two-sided partnership, and that's important. That's why we talk about these in the business model canvas as being partners. Okay, so again, if you look at the intermediaries, so help the company to promote, sell, and distribute its products to the final buyer. So, you know, there's an example there. You see these all over. That could be in McDonald's. It could be down in AIT's canteen, if ever we get to see it again. But all it is just a simple, you know, here you have the brand, the logo, and so on and so forth being presented there. So they're promoting Coke, Sprite, Fanta, and so on in their organizations. So, and the point I'm making is it's all about the branding, reinforcement, keep it topical, keep it going, and by that, people remember, people see these things. You're constantly reinforcing the message. That's why, you know, do you know the old trick in presentations, and that's why you see all your lectures, probably a lot of them, where you say, here's the outlines, this is what we're going to cover, right? And then we go off and we blabber about them. And then at the end of it, we say, now that's what we've covered. Basically, we've covered these points, and there's a saying to reinforce a message. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. So it's literally a way of communicating and marketing products. Show them, do it, and then come back and show them what you've just done, for example. You know, so tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you've just told them. So it's reinforcement, and that's one of the core to marketing, that you have constant communication and refreshment and of your message, your core message, and as such. So the types of intermediaries, you'll have the physical distribution firms, your wholesalers, for example, or your shops, which are you know, whether they're pharmacies, corner shops, chains like SuperValu, Londis, and so on. You might have financial intermediaries who might be bulk buyers from you, which could be also the resellers. They might actually buy the products from you and resell them on. Now, when you're getting involved with, let's just say you're manufacturing sports health drinks, for argument's sake, and you're selling them to a distributor who in turn pushes them on to resellers and gets them out there to the customers. So it takes all that side off of you. You just focus on what you have to do. The normal split is 20, 40, 40, which means that of the final selling price, if it was €100 that you charged a customer, around 40% will go to the retailer. About another 40%, give or take, on average, will go to the wholesaler, and the remaining 20%, so €20, is what you get to cover these. So these add on, and you say, well, geez, that's unfair, and so on and so forth. They're taking risk as well. They're having to stock it, create space, environment, and distribute it, transportation, labeling, marketing, all that sort of stuff. They have to do all that work themselves, and that's what they're essentially charging you for. But that's on average for a physical product or whatever. That's the breakdown. Now, you wouldn't, of course, have that with a service. You might have an intermediary, all right. You might have somebody that's promoting your service and so on. So it wouldn't be as complex. But generally speaking, in a product environment, that's how it works. And then, of course, we have the other micro environment we look at is competitors. Strategic advantage by positioning their offerings against competitors' offerings. That's why the value proposition is so important. Identify what you can do differently from your competitors that will attract their customers or hold on to your existing customers. It could be the price of it, it could be the quality, it could be performance, it could be the size, shape, availability of it, all these sort of things, attributes of the product. And we talked about these on why that attracts your customers and they don't go to other competitors. And that's what gives you your competitive advantage. Right? And the key to good business and success is always trying to have that advantage over your competitor. Now, it might be price today. You might be slightly cheaper than your competitors. It's a weak one because your competitors are finding, oh, that's why they're buying us. Because the market's selling it slightly cheaper than us. Let's drop the price. And you get into a price war and oftentimes a race to the bottom and nobody's making any money out of it. And the only ones that are winning are the customers because because competitors are pricing each other out of the market. You end up with lower prices being paid by the customer. Customers are happy, but your business is in the gutter as a consequence. And that's a very common practice in business as well, is our price wars to obliterate the competitors. One of the Dragon's Den guys from the English one. I never watched the Irish one, to be honest with you. But one of the English guys, Duncan Ballantyne, he started off with an ice cream round, and his approach to it was, geez, everyone was selling ice creams, or well, any number of ice creams, and but he bought a couple of vans, and he followed around a particular group and watched them, observed these ice cream van routes, and went off, bought a van, and what he did was he decided that competitor was always doing the same route. He said, I'll do exactly the same route, but I go out maybe half an hour or an hour earlier than him. And he did. And of course, the kids and everyone were buying his ice cream before the other fellow came around. Literally, an ice cream war broke out. He started going around. He kept on changing, charging lower prices, and of course, put the other guys out of business. What happened then? He had all the routes, had the vans on the road, and he started to up the price again. Now, that's a dangerous strategy, obviously, because you don't know what kind of cash reserves the other company they could actually compete and keep continuing, and you might run out of money to keep going at lower prices. It's a high risk maneuver. But in his case, and today, where does he make his money? Out of old folks' homes and all that sort of retirement centres. I mean, he's obviously diversified and moved on and so on, and has done quite well out of it. So yes, competitor offerings, always know what they're offering and try to be one step ahead of it. That's what competitive advantage is. They're probably the competitive advantage, two most important words in business. Find out what you're doing better than others. And sustainable, the third word, competitive advantage. Sustainable competitive advantage, that you continuously keep an advantage above your competitors. And in your case now, you're coming up with your USP, your value proposition, that should feed into and should become or could become your competitive advantage. So if we look at the macro environment and in terms from the company, so excuse me, any group that has an actual or potential interest in or impact on an organization's ability to achieve its objectives. So financial public, media public, government public, citizen action groups, local public, general public, internal public, as such. Now, internal is a bit of an awkward one because that you might have some people might not agree with your products, and you might get some kind of internal politics. Maybe the finance department might tell the financial person this is not good business practice because it's a high risk maneuver. You're potentially going to lose money, so I'm not going to go with it. Blah, blah, blah. So you can have these internal squabbles, but generally speaking, you iron these out. All the rest are pretty explanatory. Now, for example, if you look at financial publics, some investors and or banks or hedge funds and so on and so forth might be looking for new products or new areas or new industries to get into to spread and make more money for their investors. Look what happened there in the US with the GameStop, for example. Some of these hedge funds and investment funds see this. One of the, for example, Elon Musk just put something in a tweet about Bitcoin, and people started. So it jumped 15% literally in a couple of days. Bitcoin, and so all we want, and people follow. We tend to say, well, geez, that's why he has his money. Maybe that's worth a punt and invest some money in there, and so on, so on. So that you can have huge influence from public and finance and so on. Financials are a little bit more discreet, but they do. I won't say manipulate, but manage markets in their favor. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in business because if these investment funds, when they buy shares at low price and then sell them on at a higher price, you're the investor. They're using your money. You're paying them a fee. They go off and get them at a low price, and they sell them back to you, and they take a big chunk of the money and give it back and give you a return on your investment. It's yeah, it doesn't sound fair, but that's the way it is. People are greedy fundamentally. And citizen action groups, you might just have a particular group of people that say this is against our beliefs or against our we find that this has a negative effect on this group of people or in a particular age group or ethnicity and so on and so forth, and they could be up in arms. Not to be contentious about it, but the one of the more recent examples was remember those statues outside on the hotel, Shelburne Hotel above up in Dublin, and they were removed because they were black and they were female, and they were it appeared that they had chains around their legs, and a number of the black community came out and propagated that this was the reason, and so on and so on. And it took a lot of convincing, and of course the owners of the Shelburne got a bit of pressure from the US, because this was right in the thick of Black Lives Matter. So all of a sudden things started to impact us here in Ireland. And it's like, come on, Jesus, these things have been here for forever and a day, And it took some very, very astute, not so much historians, but what's your man? Ross Geller out of Friends. What was his paleontologist? A couple of these guys to go back and say they weren't chains, they were actually ornaments, and so on and so on, and it wasn't anything to do with black slavery or anything of the sort. But at the time, they jumped on the bandwagon, and there were several black academics saying this is what it is and this is blah blah blah, all wrong. But that's the kind of thing that can happen. Citizen action groups, a momentum can get going, and suddenly what was a day by day type of scenario outside of the Shelburne Hotel, no one probably even noticed, became the topics on news and taken down. They were put back eventually. As I would say, common sense prevailed, but that's my opinion, not the opinion of the college. Anyway, these are the kind of elements, and now we have the macro, and this is I have the macro environment. So you have demographics, the economic, neutral, technological, political, and cultural. These all essentially come under what's known as your PESTA: political, economic, technological, social, legal, and environmental. It's a standard tool for identifying what impacts these can have on your practice in your company and so on. So if you had, I would say, you were opening an after-hour service for in an urban area or in a housing estate, for example, you want to convert your garage to a physio sports injury and so on and so forth. Do you have insurance? Do you have you license to practice? What are the implications for tax? Are there people coming up? Are there strangers coming up? What kind of so these are all things that have to be thought of. And so they all call it. So we look at these things, in terms of demographics. Are people? Do we have enough people of the right age? And this is what you're looking for your product and service. Who are our people? So break down the demographics. Is it center? If it's George's Key in Dublin, mostly 20 to 40-year-olds, flying hard, playing hard, spending power or the volume of spending power, but might be enough for you to want to venture into. So demographics and all this sort of stuff, and the economic right now, tough time to be starting any kind of a business, but there are opportunities out there. So again, the size of human population in terms of density, location, age, gender, race, occupation, and other statistics. High income earners, low income earners, ethnicity. For example, look at the number of Polanska shops that would have opened up in Ireland over the last 10 or so years. Well, Polish shops. Why? Because there's a large Polish community in Ireland, and you have in some of the bigger towns, you will have Polish shops and such, and so on, so on, so on. So demographically, we're becoming a little bit more, I won't say cosmopolitan, but we've opened up dramatically in the last 30 odd years in Ireland to many different nationalities and so on. So demographic environment is important because it involves people, and people are what make up markets. So of our 4.5 or 4.8 million people in Ireland, it's approximately 51-49% female, male. And then you start breaking it down. How many are over 70, over 60, over 40? How many are still at school, under 18? So you break down all your markets. So then you find out you want to address males between 25 and 35 in rural or urban areas, city dwellers and so on. So you start narrowing down. So straight away you're looking at Cork, Limerick, Galway maybe, and Dublin. They're your main metropolitan areas and those age groups. So you begin and say, well, all along the west coast, that's too sparse. Let's go and focus only on the 25 to 35-year-old males in Dublin, and maybe look at south of the Liffey, because maybe they have more to spend. I don't know. It's just, it's just the way you break down the demographics. So demographic trends, age, family structure, geographic population shifts, educational characteristics, and population diversity as such. So of course you're going to have a much denser population in cities, which potentially would be a bigger customer base as such. It depends on what you're selling. And educational characteristics, does it apply to higher qualified people or lower qualified people? It doesn't matter, but you will find that it's easier to communicate perhaps with somebody that has a third level education that understands this stuff, and you can inform them better, and it makes it so, because it becomes more understandable by them, they'll buy your product and so on, generally speaking. So we would rank fairly high in that context. And then the changing structure, of course, and we've talked about these before, the baby boomers include people born between 1946 and 1964. Most affluent Americans. I'm not American. I know that. Anyway, but that's what you call it. And then the Gen X, Gen Y, the snowflakes, this, that, the other thing. Just freaking terms that marketing people use to try and define categories of people and say, well, if you're born between 46 and 64, give or take, you're in my age group now, you're retired or coming up to retirement, you have more disposable income, blah, 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 and as a consequence, therefore, these could be a great market for, I don't know, holidays, cruises, personal trainers, golf products, God knows, the whole range of things, in that context. Bill Gates would say for system administrators, database administrators, that's a highly qualified job actually. Database administrator. It's not a kind of a desk job as such. It's quite a technical job. But Gates would have and Microsoft would have had a lean towards that older age group, because they can commit to work. And oftentimes they would have had ex-CEOs of companies that failed and so on, so were taking up these jobs as database administrators. Obviously because they would have had the wherewithal to run companies in the first place. They would have had the brains, so to speak. But they've done everything. People of my age would have been around the block so many times that we're stable. We're not going to get up in the forum, next best offer, and jump ship and so on and so forth. So that's why you would have invested a lot in people. So there are advantages Gen X, as I say, 65 to 76. So high potential divorce rates, cautious economic outlook, less materialistic, and family comes first, and they lag behind on retirement savings. Um, that's a fair kind of description, because what salary starts to increase, from the 80s, 90s at a phenomenal pace. Um, if I put it this way, my very first job, I was on £6,500, which would have been like what that was, maybe €8,000 or €9,000 or something like that, maybe less. I can't remember. But you got more bang for your buck back then. Right? You wouldn't work for €6,000 or €7,000 per year now. Okay, you might do it as a part-time job while you're in college, but you couldn't live on it. It's as simple as that. But the salary started to rocket up, and so did materialistic, and people wanted to have things because things became more available and more freely available, not free, but much more choice of product. Then we have the millennials. The Gen Y are eco boomers. It's not echo, it's eco boomers. Include those born between 1977 and 2000. Still before most of your time, I'd imagine. Anyway, the point about it is, comfortable with technology, yeah, which is fine, great. Includes tweens, anyone aged 12 to that, and young adults, 20s. Okay, you're on the borderline, but comfortable. But they're not saying much else about that group. But yeah, it's. I mean, let's just put it this way. When I was a kid, televisions were black and white. Okay, computers in the house were just, forget about it, didn't exist. We're talking about transistor radios here and all that sort of crap. Was that to our disadvantage? No, because we grew up and we learned to adapt to all these new technologies. Just because now we weren't born with a mobile phone in our hand, so to speak, or a laptop and so on, and doesn't mean we're any less competent and so on. It's just that the environment is different now than it was back then. It'll be something else in 20 years' time that that generation will have to look back and say, "Oh, Jesus, you were born with computers and you can't use this holographic interface and so on." Maybe, I don't know. And then, so generational marketing is important in segmenting people by lifestyle of life state instead of age. So what's your lifestyle? Basically, what they're saying here is, you're as young as you feel. You might be 60, but you might not look it, and you might have a lifestyle that allows you to work maybe 3 days a week. Therefore, you can spend the other 3 days on your physical fitness and lifestyle, and maybe you got the balance right, or got the balance differently. But in any way, it's a lifestyle as opposed to he's over 50, he's over 70, therefore they can't do this and can't do that. You'd be surprised what some old fogies can and can't do. And likewise, when you're younger, you might be as fit as God knows, and highly flexible, adaptable, this, that, and the other, but you might not have the income to be able to afford, or you might have other commitments, and that's the lifestyle. As you get older, and then you go through the family period time, and marrying later, and having kids, and you get over that phase, and you worry about them, getting them into college, and then you eventually find you have the me time. But things change over time, priorities change, and that's what companies watch out for as well. And then you have other demographics, when we're looking at, people are divorcing and separating a lot more, choosing not to marry, even postponing marrying later in life, marrying without intending to have children. And that's becoming quite common, or maybe one child, that kind of thing, if at all, and then increased number of working women, of course, that's a given, that's nowadays, but 30, 40 years ago, 50 years, 40 years ago, I think it was, if you were a female in the public service, once you got married, you had to leave. Certainly if you had children, forget about it, you'd be frowned upon and so on. And then you have the stay-at-home dads. Is that new? Not really. I knew a couple of guys in the 80s whose wives were, they packed in their jobs and moved abroad, and jobs. So they stayed at home and raised the kids. I mean, that can be common enough practice, you know. Um, and then the company's macro environment, look at the growth in the US and West and South and the decline of the Midwest. That's just geographical change. And in a manner of speaking, you would have had that similarly in Ireland, depopulation of of rural areas, people moving to the city and so on. So and that can come down to government policy and infrastructure. So you have all these great motorways all converging on Dublin, the biggest car park in Europe, as Ed Walsh who was the president of UL, that's how he described it. He used to have a great way of conveying that message, and that was he had a map. I actually have it downstairs. A map of Ireland. You see it on the ad for electricity. The map of Ireland, looking down, and you see all the lights on and how it's gone. But he used to use that map, and he'd have the roads, all the main roads, the M4, M5, M6, M7, and all this sort of stuff, M9, all coming into Dublin. And he said, what's missing in this map is the link between Donegal down along the west coast, down to Cork, Kerry, and back in through Waterford. That big corridor, it's getting there. But that's a way of increasing the infrastructure to enable people to stay at home. And there's another big thing that's caused that change as well. This last bloody year, there's property prices have gone up. Why? Because people have said, hang on, this home, I'm working from home, why do I need to be working here in Dublin, or even mortgaging up in Dublin? Pack up, and there's been quite a number of people who have done that, sold up and got the hell out of Dodge and have moved back home again. And now, to add, so you had Ed Walsh's prediction, the government's been doing something about it. It takes them forever and a day to get these roads built. Now you had COVID, which kind of forced us to have to look at, this is why we are doing what we are, for example. But on top of that, now you have legislation coming in September, where an employee will have the legal right to ask, can they work from home? Doesn't mean they're going to be allowed to work from home. That's a different case. But for the employer, it means that they have to have a really legitimate, strong reason as to why they have to come into work. Now, most employers, using their head will say, hang on a second, maybe you don't all have to be in here all at the same time. Maybe I only need you in here 2 days a week. Therefore, I can reduce the size of the offices I need. Therefore, I can reduce my costs and overheads, pass it on to the customers. Happy days. Everyone's a winner. You get to work at home. They get their product. They get your services. They sell on the service product, whatever it is, to the customer at reduced cost. So watch that space and see how that evolves in terms of facilities management in Dublin. And they're getting a bit scared, actually. Here you have it here, home officing and home office and telecommuting, as it used to be called years ago. It's just now remote working. More educated and more white collar, of course. Education has come way up in across most developed countries, which means that you have to be more effective on how you communicate. In other words, you can't bullshit to people because they understand, they know more, and then arm them with the internet, and they can research stuff very, very, very quickly, and therefore they can see, and that becomes the challenge for you and so on as a supplier or a product or a service. So they can check you out, they can check out the competition. Yourselves, you go on, you look and you have all these price comparison sites. So they're comparing your offering with about a dozen others or a couple of hundred other offerings, and me as a consumer, I can go in and I can see all of these and why is one better. And then you have the ratings, Trustpilot and things like that. All of these other entities that can make or break your business based on feedback and so on. And demographics again, ethnicity, gay, lesbian, disabled, national, international. These are all valid entities. Now, of course, I'm not going to get into discussions about equality, diversity, and inclusion. God help me, but as for different, I was doing some questionnaire the other day, and they asked me, was I non-binary? I said, for frick's sake, I'm not a computer. What are you talking about non-binary? Anyway, outside it's up in AIT, outside the big lecture room there across from um, the canteen. My name on them is called confused.com. Anyway, it's just the way it's so straight away people, I'm bi, I'm trans, I'm this, I'm that, and so on and so on. The point about it is diversity, and at the same time, we want to be inclusive. So why do we want to categorize and box ourselves and pigeonhole ourselves into this group, that group, and that group, and that group, to be different when we want to be inclusive and equally inclusive and so on? It just mind boggles. Maybe I'm looking at it oversimply and so on. But anyway, in fairness, do I have a right to comment like that? Absolutely. Because if any of you have ever watched the TV series, I'm just taking out my handkerchief now, watched the TV series Married, not Married, yeah, Married with Children. Family Ties. And you have all sorts of combinations of people inside there. Trust me when I tell you, they are only trotting after us, my wife and myself. We cover all of their bases and then some. Okay, and it's so yes, I can speak quite authoritatively on a number of these subjects. And one of the kids is gay, married to a Brazilian guy, and they will tell you themselves they have the gay pound because these guys would spend an absolute fortune looking good, not themselves but their house, their cars, and so on and so forth, and so on, and it has value. But it's a real group. It has real value proposition, and your business, who gives it rat's ass? As long as you're able to communicate, talk, and so after that, the rest is just all classified for reasons. So then we have, if we look at the economic environment again, consists of factors. Industrial economies are richer markets, of course, and then subsistence. So you have kind of developed world and not so developed world. We used to categorize the world, underdeveloped, this, that, the other sort of stuff. So technically, yes, they still exist. Some poor countries in South America, certainly in Africa, and so on. There are poor countries. We're just at different levels of evolution and so on. But you might say, well, what about Africa? Some of the biggest markets are in the continent of Africa and countries within Africa. The potential is phenomenal in terms of products. And then we have the change in income. So value marketing involves ways to offer financially cautious buyers greater value. So the right combination of quality and service at a fair price. Really, that's what it comes down to, getting the balance right. If you were to offer that car on the screen for Tata's car, for example, which is €1,000, I think, something like that. But if you were to offer it for €50, people would say, it must be joking. Wouldn't take my life in my hands get in something that's only cost €50. But if I told you here in Ireland that you were to buy it for €5,000, so geez, that's a nice cheap car, a nice little handy city run around and so on, for maybe. So perception has a big issue. So Ernst and Engel's law: as income rises, the percentage spent on food declines, the percentage spent on housing remains constant, your mortgage, and the percentage spent on saving increases. So as you get as income rises, because the cash with income rising is also age. So we begin to save a little bit more, probably invest in pensions and this, that, and the other thing, as our incomes rise, and we spend less on food. I'm comfortable with that kind of classification, or that point. The percentage spent on food declines. I'd be inclined to disagree with that a little bit more, because of patterns and changes and so on in people, we might actually be spending proportionately a little bit more, but on much higher quality food as such. So we won't be going for are needed, it's inputs and marketers and so on. So trend, shortage of raw materials, increased population or pollution, and increased government intervention. So this is the natural environment. These are the things that can cause, countries can be blacklisted from providing certain commodities, raw materials, and so on and so forth. And that means that there comes a shortage. Therefore, that can drive the price to you as a manufacturer up, which then you probably end up passing on to the consumer as such. And it might be if you're only sourcing from one particular country and your competitors are sourcing from another country, that means you could be in trouble. They might not be, and so on. Pollution, obviously, that's the ongoing debate, and it has been. A lot of measures have been taken and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, you can have a lot of pressure to bear on particularly in manufacturing, the impacts of pollution and so on and so on. What's the carbon footprint and all that sort of stuff. And then government intervention could be simple taxes. Tax on plastic bags, increase tax on cigarettes, increase tax on road usage, increase your road tax, and so on. All of these can be elements introduced by the government, and then environmentally sustainable strategies. That's Eamon Ryan and his brigade, the Green Party, and so on. Not being harsh, but I listened to the radio this morning. They are having some serious problems internally in that department. The bullying, harassment, and number of people that are dropping out of the department, out of that party, and so on. It's going to get a lot worse. And I think probably the biggest problem is because too much of it is Dublin centric and not outside the M50, as we call it. Outside that we're not conscious of. I mean, this is a guy who was telling us, that we should cycle to the shops and so on and so forth. You try that on some of our country roads, Mother Jesus, I wouldn't even do it, and I'd be a competent cyclist, to say the least. You'd be taking your life in your hands, and so on. But nevertheless, generically speaking, we would have to look at ways of doing things that can, this, what do we call it, circular economics, where we want to have more reusable products or environmentally friendly products or constituents and so on. That's why Audi would be, more popular. The most second most unfriendly, environmentally unfriendly product or car is the Prius. The most unfriendly is the what do you call it? That big Jeep, the Hummer. The big Hummer does about 5 gallons to the mile or something like that. That's extremely user or environmentally unfriendly. The next one is the Prius. And you're saying you're kidding me, Mark. It's an electric car, blah blah blah. Well, no one tell you what Prius. The problem is that almost everything is either degradable and are reusable, the metal in them, so on, except the batteries. They are extremely harmful to the environment. And here's another thing to think about when you're looking at electric cars and so on, and the companies that are building, including Tesla and all these. When they talk about using electric cars and saving the future and all this is why I always have to think about these things. When you think about using or buying and using electric cars and so on, helpful to the environment and so on, factor in the total cost of building the production plants, which cost billions of dollars to build, the amount of harm that can be done to the environment, the resources being used up before you even make a car. Now, total that or include that in the total cost of the car kind of tells a different story then. Okay, they're not as eco-friendly or contributing to eco-friendliness as you would think. In actual fact, diesel cars are probably a little bit more effective. According to some of the research done, that you have a diesel car that's well tuned and keep running and so on and so forth, the total cost of manufacture right through to end of life is more effective than some of these modern electric cars because of the cost of investment and so on, production facilities. So then, anyway, we're moving quickly on to most dramatic force in changing the marketplace. Chris creates new products and opportunities. So safety of new products always a concern, and that's health and safety, rules and regulations, and that's why we have to carry risk analysis of our products and so on in advance. But health and safety is one of the biggest contentious issues. The greatest compliance, and even if you're making a phenomenally new nutritious drink, you have to print all the contents and ingredients and so on, so forth in ever such fine print and so on, for compliance. So rules and regulations that have made these things, in some cases, almost cost prohibitive. It isn't worth it by the time you have all this labeling done, and marketing people were going ballistic over all of this. Why? Because it was taken up what they call marketing real estate. In other words, taking up part of the labels, highlighting all this crap stuff, and where we could be having much bigger brand awareness and so on. So technological environment and as I say, changing things. Political environment, the cost of laws, which kind of follows on from the last point. Government agencies, pressure groups, Green Party, just only second. And then that influence or limit various organizations and individuals in a given society. So certain people, what's his name? Canley? Can't think of his first name. He would have been a great proponent of leave the EU, for example, and all that sort of stuff. But you can have individuals, John Waters and this other one complaining about our civil liberties and so on, civil liberties groups themselves. Some say they can be wacko, but in actual fact it can actually be extremely beneficial because it kind of keeps some of the legislation in check, knowing that in our type of society and so on, you mightn't do that in maybe Korea, North Korea, definitely. You wouldn't last very long if you started to challenge some of the government or military comments. But nevertheless, political environments. Be cognizant of what's happening, what laws are changing or potentially change that can affect your business. And again, more on this legislation, increased legislation, changing government agency enforcement, all these different groups, subgroups, oversight committees, and then you have all of the ombudsmen, generally there for working on for in the interest of employees, citizens, and so on. But these are all factors, so it's becoming more and more complex as an operating environment. Socially responsible behavior and cause-related marketing. Tom's shoes, those kind of slippers that you wear, for example, that would be a not-for-profit type organization. So that's kind of cause-related. Why he wants to be able to give away whatever money he makes from shoes, they provide the shoes for underprivileged kids in South America, Brazil, and places like that, Mexico, and other parts of the world. That's why he gets all these rock groups and not rock groups, celebrity groups and so on. So goes to a concert and has any chance to walk around the block with me or whatever for 100 meters, something like that, wearing these, and because of that, brilliant marketing, social media marketing, bang, out there, everyone's such and such, and Justin Bieber's wearing Tom shoes, and everyone goes out and buys Tom shoes. But that's the whole point about it, so it's cause related and so on. So you have all these different kind of charitable events. And then cultural environment consists of institutions and other forces that affect society's basic values, perceptions, and behaviours. A cultural environment here in Ireland undoubtedly would be the GAA. It has a huge influence on many people. Some would say too much, others would say not enough. But in any case, a religious background might have been considered to be a huge cultural environment and so on, but that has been diminishing over the last 20 or 30 years and such. And then, of course, scandal after scandal, the downside of it, can also have a more negative impact on the traditional Catholic Ireland perception. Is it still there? Jury's out on that one. But the most important word inside there, perception. It may not be actual, but if people perceive it to be the case, then oftentimes that becomes the new reality or the new truth as such. So perceptions are, to use the expression, are everything. And then we're coming towards the end of this, you'll be delighted to know, folks. So core beliefs and values are persistent and are passed from parents to children and are reinforced by schools, structures, businesses, and government. To a large extent would have been the case, but that's been further diluted. Some of our core beliefs and for example, and are more open to change and include people's views of themselves, others, organizations, society, nature, and the universe itself. The secondary beliefs now are probably the more focal points insofar as that we are becoming more heavily influenced by what we're seeing our peers doing, people around us, and so on, as opposed to listening to the advice of our elders, being our parents, uncles, aunts, and older siblings, and so on. So it's and a lot of that, I beg your pardon. I just forgot to turn off my phone. These secondary beliefs now are being heavily influenced by social media as such. So most certainly it's having an impact. So people's views of themselves, Yankelovich monitors consumers' agents, so do-it-yourselfers, recent movers, and then adventurers. I'm not convinced on the do-it-yourselfers. I think that's becoming less of a case because people are not picking up on skill sets. If again social media is anything to judge or go by, I see people looking for help on the most ridiculous of things altogether, and don't even know where to start looking for help as such. I mean, if it could be a simple plumbing fix or electrical thing and so on. I'm just surprised that I learned a lot of my skills from watching my own father and these uncles and so on. And nowadays, if I don't have my how to say if I don't have my go-to person, I have my go-to YouTube. But it's remarkable how people will just throw money at it and say, "Oh, I'll get a plumber and I'll get a carpenter and I'll get this, that, and the other thing, pay for them," and so on. So we're becoming less of do-it-yourself. So a lot of basic skills are being lost, and so on. So people's view of others, more cocooning. I don't want to even go there. Yeah, we tend to isolate ourselves, and we're not as open and societal as we like to think we are. A lot of that again is because we're behind closed doors, windows, and peeking out and doing our little Facebook stuff and so on. Everyone has an opinion, and I even noticed it on this online environment that we're in here. In another class altogether, it's remarkable how some people will blurt stuff out, and it can be quite surprising what they might say. And I would guarantee they would never say it if they were in the classroom environment. Why? Because they'd be picking up on the ambience, the emotions, the movements, the non-verbal communications of everyone around them. And so on. I'm going to say that now because it's not the right time, place, and so on. But because you're online and you're sitting in your own room and you think there's no one else around, yeah, people can blurt out stuff or say things and so on. That's a real problem, and that's kind of the issue I would have with this concept of cocooning. Be very, very careful. You need to as I say, develop your skills in non-verbal communications. So people views of organizations and people views of society. Patriots defend it, reformers want to change it, and then the malcontents want to leave it. I'm a malcontent. Whinging old so-and-so, cranky old person. Not really, but would I like to change it? Not too old. I said you're welcome to it, but these are generalized. So you have different perspectives, different views, and so on. So how to appease, and these are the secondary cultures. And then culture, environment shifts and secondary. So people's views of nature, some feel ruled by it, some feel in harmony with it, and some seek to master it and all that. So these are just opinions of various groups and so on. Are you a vegan? Yeah, but I like to eat meat every third Sunday of a month that begins with a J. Different rules and regulations. People's view of the universe, renewed interest in spirituality. Oh, Jesus, don't get me started. Spirituality, mindfulness, well-being, and all that sort of stuff. It's been marketed exceptionally well. People have been convinced that this has to be the case. People, you have to look after the mindfulness and our well-being and our spirituality and so yourselves, take a brain dump, as I call it, and just kind of clear out everything, get all the negativities out of the system. I do it on a bike, can't do it now, but that's how I do it. I don't need to be going down to join this group and swing out of the rafters, with by my toenails just to be, in another world. Do you get my point? Okay. Anyway, so wrapping up on this now, and we're in the end of it. You'd be delighted to know. So, views of responding to market environments. You react, adapt to the environment and the forces. You can have aggressive reactions, proactive. In other words, get out there, see it coming before it happens, or be reactive. If you're reactive, you're in catch up. So watching and reacting to forces. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. You can be extremely effective in a reactive form. You might let other competitors out there, and then you come as a fast follower. That can be a very effective strategy. And the reason being is that the first person out with something new, some innovative product or service, they have to educate the market about the product and service, and that costs money. Okay, time and money. And when you can come in and say, well, everyone knows about it now, I can sell it, and you can actually do it cheaper because you don't have to invest in those educational or informational things, sending, taking out ads in newspapers, TV, radio, and, loads of stuff on social media, blah, 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 just inform about the product or service. And a competitor come on and say, now the customer base knows about it, I can do it cheaper. So being reactive, Meteor was really good at that when I worked with them. Fast follower strategy is known as. Right, folks. Believe it or believe it not. Just as Matt mentions, the quality of the slides still okay or not? Yeah, perfect, guys. Thanks a million, for the feedback on that. I'm just conscious that we're getting the quality out there. It's all part of the marketing. So let me wrap this one up, close that down, and get out, and don't swing back to. He is still here. No, he's not actually. God love him. Here I am. That's it. So the bottom line, folks. Next Tuesday we'll start our class. We'll just get settled in, and we'll go through the each of the teams. We'll take them in team order, if you don't mind, and just nominate one person. I'll put this up on video, so if people need to know instructions or what to do again, it's at the start of this video, and here I am talking about it again. So 2 ideas, could be a product or service, and or either or whatever, just 2 ideas. What the market size you think is, what's unique about it, what's the value proposition, why you're so enthusiastic about it, in each case, and that's it, and that you can make a business out of that, potentially, and then we develop the marketing plan to back up each of those. So the class will decide which is the more attractive of the 2 ideas, and the team then will run with that. So one person from each team. I'll leave it to yourselves to nominate the person. You can tell me on the day; it doesn't particularly matter, and that's it. Then we get that done, get that out of the way. So that's the next phase of the should we say, the ball rolling, and we start building up. So yeah, okay. But I'll finalize this video. I'll get that up onto YouTube, but I'll also put up lecture 7, which is the as I call it, the advanced marketing mix, the 7 P's. So you hear me going on about the product, price, promotion, place, people, physical evidence, and processes. So I'll upload that video for yourselves. You'll have to go and have a look at that one, because I won't be doing that live. Okay. So get some time between now and the next few days, perhaps, to look at that one. And so use Thursday. I won't drag you in on Thursday. No, you use that time. You probably start finalizing your ideas. So if you get a chance between now and Thursday, which is tomorrow, to look at the other video, well and good. Failing that, folks, happy days. Any questions, comments, insults, jokes? No. Okay, listen, folks, take it easy, and we'll see you then next Tuesday afternoon. All right, just better rephrase that next week. Okay, take it easy. God bless. Bye bye.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.